Uh, Dear viewer, my dear student, once again I want to welcome you to this history and government revision session with Mr. Ogada, teacher of history and government at Alliance High School. And in our previous presentation, we tackled in the introductory part of this paper, the paper 1, and we looked at all the way section A, running all the way from question 1 to question number 7. And now, without taking much time, I want us now to look at question number 8. And in question number 8, the examiner was asking about the two rights of a child contained in the Constitution of Kenya. The two rights of a child contained in the Constitution of Kenya. So this question is drawn from the topic democracy and human rights. Democracy and human rights. And therefore, you will be expected to understand where exactly has this question been drawn from. Now, you look at the rights of different groups of people. We have the rights of the children, rights of elderly persons, rights of persons with disabilities, the rights of the aged, those special groups, the rights of the minority communities that we have in Kenya. So those special groups, now the examiner went and picked a section of the rights of the child, and therefore in your next revision, you should be able to really focus on those other minority groups or the special groups, if I may say, that their rights can be tested about. Of course, you'll be also obliged to know the rights of arrested persons or the rights of persons in custody, the rights of persons before a court of law. So you need to broaden your revision. You need to broaden your revision and ensure that you have those correct responses in your notes. So taking us through these answers: 1, that a child has a right to free, compulsory, basic education. The choice of words very important. Free, compulsory, basic education. This education is supposed to be free. This education is compulsory, and then they are given the basic. Remember, basic education runs all the way from kindergarten to the 844. That is, you tackle, 4 years in secondary and 4 years at the university. That's the basic education. Then we have the right to parental care. Every child has a right to be taken care of by their parents. Right to name or nationality. They need to be given names. Right to survive, the same as nutrition, shelter, or health care. Those are the same points. Please take note of that. Then we have the right to protection from abuse or neglect, discrimination, harmful cultural practices, violence, inhuman treatment, exploitation, or child labor. So you can see how these points are same points but used in different ways. Same points but used in different ways. And therefore it will be really, really imperative on you that you get right those different terminologies. Then of course we have the right not to be detained. The right not to be detained. Those are the rights of a child that are contained in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Then number 9, 2 methods which were used by the British to establish colonial rule in Kenya. This question is drawn from the topic establishment of colonial rule in Kenya. And then we have the various methods that were used by the British. The various methods that were used by the British to establish their rule in our country. And those methods include military expeditions, also marked as conquests or use of force. Then we have collaboration with some African rulers. Then, of course, signing of treaties with local leaders or chiefs. And signing of treaties is also the same as diplomacy. So in instances where they used diplomatic methods, then that is the same as signing of treaties. Then we have establishing of bases or the company rule. Like for example, in Kenya, there are bases, for example, in Fort Hall, that is in Murang'a. We had Fort Smith, Kabete, etc. So those are the bases that they established. The company, and which company was this? The Imperial British East Africa Company, IBEACO. But of course, you're not supposed to abbreviate. Imperial British East African Company. That was the name of that particular company. Then they also used the divide and rule method. Offering gifts. Offering gifts is the same as trickery, where they tricked these people with gifts and then ended up colonizing them. Then use of the Christian missionaries. Those are the many methods that the British used to establish their colonial rule in Kenya. Then question number 10. 2 roles played by medicine men among Kenyan communities during the colonial period. This question will be drawn from the topic socio-economic and political organization of Kenyan communities. That is topic 5 in Form 1 work. Topic 5 in Form 1 work. That is, so you'll find that, for example, when we are describing the social organization of Kenyan communities, one of the description of this organization was that they had religious leaders that led them in various functions in the community. Examples of these religious leaders included the medicine men. So the examiner was very particular to just pick on an aspect of that broad description and then focus your attention on the role played by medicine men. And therefore, I think so far you can be able to tell that Section A pays attention to small details. So you really need to get your small details right. Pay attention to the small details for you now to be able to respond as appropriate or as needed. So for example, number 1, they treated the sick or diagnosed diseases. They treated the sick or diagnosed diseases. Then they acted as ritual experts. Then they were witch doctors. That was also a function. Next, they were rainmakers. They were priests, or they prayed or offered sacrifices or officiated religious functions. So that was the question that was tested in number 10. So we now move to question number 11. And question number 11 talks about one feature of the education provided by the missionaries in Kenya during the colonial period. And it's important to note that this question is drawn from the second topic in Form 3 work. The fourth topic in Form 3 work. That is social and economic developments in Kenya during the colonial period. And then you place it under the social developments. Under the social developments, we have education, and then we have health. So in this particular question, it's important that we understand that education was provided for by different groups of people. We had the colonial government providing education. We had the missionaries providing education. We had the Africans themselves also having education. And then, of course, there was also the education for the Asian, the different groups that provided education to the races that existed at this particular time. So what was the features of the education that was given by the missionaries to the people of Kenya? 1, it was denominational. It was denominational or religious. Then number 2, it was elementary or the same as basic. Then number 3, it was industrial, hands-on or technical. So those are the responses that we expected you to give us in your response. And remember, that I just mentioned when we were looking at question number 10, that the education, that the questions that are tested in section A, these questions focus on details, paying attention to small details. And therefore, you can see we are just drawing a small detail from this particular topic, the education provided by the missionaries, and then that is what you were given and expected to answer. So now we move to the next question, that is question number 12. And the student was asked to identify two similar demands of the Ukamba Members Association and the Taita Hills Association. I've told you over and over that for you to be able to answer a particular question, before you even think of the answers, you need to place it in its correct topic of placement. And therefore, which topic does this question emanate from? The topic is on political developments and the struggle for independence in Kenya between 1919 and 1963. And then in this particular topic, we have different political associations that were formed. Different political associations that were formed. These associations had their different demands that they placed before the colonial government. Because remember, it was a time of colonial oppression. It was a time of the Africans losing so much as far as their land was concerned, opportunities, and many, many other points. And therefore, you can see that again the examiner has, in a way, cornered the student because he or she wants the students to specifically identify, first to understand the demands of these associations. And then apart from just the demands, then now you are able to link the demands of Ukamba Members Association and the Taita Hills Association. We had so many of these associations. And therefore now you can be able to really understand that the examiner is focusing on the details. And remember, I want to make a clarification that it is called Ukamba Members Association. You'll find some books putting it as Ukambani Members Association. That is not an association that existed in Kenya at this time. It is called the Ukamba Members Association. So what were the similar demands of these two associations? One, they were all demanding for the reduction of taxes. Two, an end to the destocking policy. Three, the return of the African land. And then lastly, abolition of forced labor. Go back to point number 2, an end to destocking policy. That was the main demand of the Ukamba Members Association. So if somebody was to ask you in the next paper to identify the main demand of the Ukamba Members Association, you'll talk about an end to destocking policy. Question number 13 again. One reason why African trade unions were not in existence in Kenya before 1914. One reason why African trade unions were not in existence in Kenya before 1914. This question again has been drawn from the same topic as question number 12. And from the same topic of political developments and the struggle for independence in Kenya between 1919 and 1963. But now the examiner has gone to pick on the trade union movement. Remember, before 1914, there were no trade unions. And that's what we want you to understand. Why were there no trade unions before 1914? And what comes to your mind when you talk about 1914? Basically, before the outbreak of the First World War, which took place between 1914 and 1917. So before the outbreak of the First World War, why were there no trade union movements? Movements that were to protect and to fight for the rights of workers. One, the frequent movement of the Africans in search of paid labor. They were moving from one place to another. Therefore, they were not able to have structures. They were not able to have structures that would be stationed in one particular place to coordinate the activity. So that was the reason why they could not actually establish offices or establish these unions to advocate for the rights of the workers. Then number two, the colonial government was against the formation of African trade unions. They didn't want the Africans to be enlightened on their rights, and especially the rights of their workers. So they put a lot of restrictions with regards to workers coming together to join in these unions to advocate for their rights. Then African workers did not see the need of forming trade unions. In other words, they were illiterate. So illiteracy was also to an extent affected their view, their perspective on why there was actually the need for having these trade unions. So that is question number 13. As we come closer to finishing section A, number 14 again talks about main contribution of Wangari Maathai to the development of Kenya. I mentioned a while ago that any question in history that talks about Maine, that question can only ask for one response from the learner. You give us more than one, even if one of the answers is correct, you will definitely not score. And therefore, Wangari Maathai, you mention her in the development of Kenya, one thing that will come to your mind is environmental conservation or tree planting. Then question number 15, identify the political party that was formed by Oginga Odinga in 1966. Identify the political party that was formed by Oginga Odinga in 1966. The party was the Kenya's People's Union. A number of students were giving us abbreviations. Somebody just coming to write KPU. When you abbreviate, we are not able to really tell whether you are talking about the Kenya Planters Union, the Kenya Parents Union. You know, you can when you abbreviate, it can elicit so many response towards that particular abbreviation. And therefore, the political party here that was formed by Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, simple, Kenya's People's Union. Question number 16. Two categories of members of the National Assembly in Kenya. Two categories of members of the National, and by then let me just say this in question number 14. Question number 14, Wangari Maathai is drawn from the topic Lives and Contribution of Kenyan Leaders. Then question number 15 is drawn from social, economic, and political developments and challenges in Kenya between since independence, 1963 to date. Then question number 16, two categories of members of the National Assembly in Kenya. This question is drawn from the topic formation, structure, and the functions of the government of Kenya. The last topic in Form 3 work, that is topic 8, Form 3 work. So we are being asked to talk about the categories of the members of the National Assembly. The National Assembly is one of the houses of parliament that we have in Kenya. The other house is the Senate. Our focus here is on the National Assembly. What are the categories of those people that serve in that particular house? One, we have elected members of the National Assembly, also known as constituency representatives. Students were writing members of parliament because we are used to out here, we call those that have been elected to serve us in the National Assembly, we loosely refer to them as my area MP. That is not correct. If you just call them this is my MP, maybe the MP of this particular constituency, that one is not correct because Parliament has two houses, the National Assembly and the Senate. So when you tell us that this person is called an MP could mean a senator, or an MP could mean an elected member of the National Assembly. And therefore, please understand that if you were to write elected members of the National Assembly or elected members of Parliament, that's an inverted V. You are to tell us elected members of the National Assembly. Then we have county woman member of the National Assembly, county woman of the National Assembly, also called the women representative. She's also a member of the National Assembly. Then we have nominated members of the National Assembly, those who have been nominated. And lastly, the Speaker, who is an ex officio. Officio is O-F-F-I-C-I-O, not O-F-F-I-C-I-C-I-A-L. It's official, the Speaker who is an ex officio member. Then lastly, as we wrap up section A, name the institution that makes laws at the county level in Kenya. Name the institution that makes laws at the county level in Kenya. This question is drawn from the topic devolved government, devolution. Devolution as one of the topics in Form 4 work. So in terms of making of laws at the county level, we have the county assembly. We have the county assembly. So that brings us to the end of KCSE 2022 Paper 1 Section A. I hope you'll be tuned to still follow the remaining subsequent presentations that we have in Section B and Section C before we wrap it up with Paper 1 KCSE 2022. Otherwise, thank you so much.